house. We can fix this.
Please don't go. We will be good.
What if I told you that a beautiful marble house without peace is nothing more than a polished cage? But a simple home filled with love, laughter, and understanding, that is a true palace. Welcome to African Tales by Shira. In Benin City, in a quiet street not far from the market, there lived a woman named Maria. Maria was not tall and she was not short. She had a warm smile and kind eyes. Every morning she woke up before the sun came out. She would cook, clean, and prepare her two sons for school. Then she would carry her big cooler of pure water to sell by the roadside. Maria's husband was called Mr. John. Mr. John was a teacher at the community school not far from their house. He was a calm and quiet man. He did not shout. He did not fight. Every evening he came home, helped the boys with their homework, and told them stories before bed. They did not have a big house. Their house was a simple 3-room apartment. The paint on the wall was old. The furniture was not new. But every evening you could hear laughter coming from inside that house. Their two sons were called Emeka and Tunde. Emeka was 10 years old. He loved football and was always the first to make his father laugh. Tunde was 7. He was quiet like his father, and he loved to draw. He would use old newspapers to draw animals and people. Every Sunday, the family went to church together. After church, Maria would cook a big pot of stew with rice, and they would eat together at the table. Mr. John would say a short prayer, and then the boys would fight over the biggest piece of meat, and Maria would laugh and say, "There's enough for everyone." This was their life. It was not a life of plenty, but it was a life of peace. Maria knew this. She was grateful, or at least she thought she was. One hot afternoon, Maria was selling her pure water by the roadside. The sun was very strong and there were not many customers. She was sitting on a small stool, fanning herself with a nylon bag, when she heard a car horn. A big black jeep stopped in front of her. The window came down slowly and the woman looked out. "Maria, is that you?" Maria looked closely at the woman. She was wearing big sunglasses and her skin was smooth and glowing. Her hair was long and expensive. "Amaka?" Maria said, standing up slowly. "Yes, it is me, Amaka, from secondary school." The two women screamed and laughed. Amaka stepped out of the jeep. She was wearing a beautiful dress and expensive shoes. Her handbag alone looked like it cost more than Maria's rent. "Maria, you look the same," Amaka said, hugging her tightly. "And you look like a movie star," Maria said, laughing. They talked for a while beside the road. Amaka told Maria that she was now married to Chief Osaro, a very wealthy businessman. They lived in a big house in the government-reserved area, the part of Benin City where only very rich people lived. "Come and visit me. Come this Saturday. Bring yourself. Leave the water cooler at home." She laughed and winked. Maria too laughed, but inside, something had already started to shift. That Saturday, Maria went to visit Amaka. She took a bus and then an Okada to get to the GRA. When she arrived at the gate of Amaka's house, she stopped and stared. The house was enormous. The gate was made of black iron with gold decorations. There were 2 security guards at the gate. There was a garden in front of the house with green grass, flowers, and a small fountain. The cars parked inside the compound were big and shiny, 3 of them. The house itself was 3 floors high. The walls were painted white and cream. There were large windows with beautiful curtains you could see from outside. Maria looked at herself. She was wearing her best dress, a blue Ankara that she had owned for 3 years. Her shoes were clean but old. She almost turned back. But the gate opened and one of the security guards led her inside. Amaka welcomed her at the door with a big smile. She was wearing a silk gown that flowed around her like water. "Welcome to my home, Maria. Come in, come in." Inside, Maria could not close her mouth. The living room was bigger than Maria's entire apartment. The chairs were cream leather, soft and clean. There was a large flat television on the wall. The ceiling had a beautiful chandelier hanging from it. The floor was white marble that shone like a mirror. Amaka showed her around the house. There were 6 bedrooms. There was a dining room with a long table and 12 chairs. There was a kitchen that looked like the ones Maria had only seen in foreign films. There was even a small cinema room. They sat down and ate small chops and drank cold juice. Amaka called her house girl to bring them things. She spoke on the phone twice in a language Maria did not understand. She explained it was a business call. When Maria left that evening, she sat quietly in the bus on her way home. She looked out of the window at the streets passing by. Women selling food by the roadside, children running and playing, men on motorcycles. And she thought about Amaka's house, the marble floors, the leather chairs, the big cars, the fountain. Then she thought about her own house, the old paint, the second-hand chairs, the small fan that made noise when it was working, the pure water cooler. And for the first time in a long time, she did not feel peace. She felt something else. She felt lack.
From that day, something changed in Maria. She started to look at her life differently. She would wake up in the morning and instead of thanking God, she would look at the ceiling and think, why is our house so small? She would cook and think, Amaka has a house girl to cook for her. Why am I the one slaving in this kitchen? She would look at Mr. John sitting quietly and reading his newspaper, and she would think, a teacher. My husband is just a teacher. Amaka's husband is a chief, a businessman. He buys her designer bags and takes her to Dubai. At first, she kept these thoughts inside, but thoughts that are not dealt with do not stay inside forever. One evening, Mr. John came home from school. He was tired. He sat down and removed his shoes. Emeka ran to meet him at the door, and Mr. John smiled and pulled the boy close. Daddy, I scored 90 in maths, Emeka announced. Wonderful, Mr. John said, lifting the boy up. My son, the mathematician. Tunde came out too, holding a drawing. Daddy, I drew you, he said quietly, showing his father. Mr. John looked at the drawing carefully. It showed a man, a woman, and 2 boys standing in front of a house. They were all smiling. There was even a sun in the corner with a face. This is beautiful, Tunde, Mr. John said. Maria was standing in the kitchen doorway watching. In the past, this sight would have made her heart full. Now, it just made her feel empty. John, she said quietly. Yes, my dear? Are you planning to apply for that vice principal position at school? They said it is open. Mr. John sighed. I heard, but I'm not sure. I like teaching. The children need good teachers more than they need. The vice principal earns more money, Maria said. Mr. John looked at her. Yes, a little more. A little more, Maria repeated, and she turned back to the kitchen. Mr. John was quiet for a moment. Then he called the boys to go and wash their hands. But something uncomfortable had entered the house with Maria's words, like a cold wind through an open door. It got worse over the following weeks. Maria started to complain every day. John, look at this chair. It is shaking. Why will we buy a new one? John, Emeka's school fees are due again. How are we going to pay? John, my neighbor just told me her husband bought her a new sewing machine. Do you know what my husband has bought me this year? Nothing. Mr. John tried to remain calm. He was not the kind of man who shouted. He would listen, nod, and say, Maria, we are managing. God will provide. But that answer began to anger Maria. God will provide, she mocked one evening. God will provide. That is all you say. Other men are working, they are hustling, they are making money, and you are sitting here saying God will provide. Maria, he said quietly, I work hard. You are a teacher. A teacher earns nothing, she snapped. The boys were in the next room. They heard everything. Tunde began to draw sad pictures. Emeka stopped making his father laugh. The house was quiet now, but not the good kind of quiet. It was the quiet of a home that had lost its joy. One night, after another argument about money, Maria said something she never imagined she would say. She was standing in the bedroom. Mr. John was sitting on the bed. They had been arguing for 30 minutes. And then Maria said it. John, I think we should end this marriage. I am not happy. I am tired of this struggling life. I want better. Mr. John stood up slowly. He did not shout. He did not slam the door. He just looked at his wife with eyes that were full of pain. Maria, he said, I have never raised my hand at you. I have never insulted you. I have never gone outside to find another woman. I have been faithful to you since the day we married. I have done everything I can with what I have. And you are asking for a divorce? Maria looked away. Her heart was beating fast, but pride had covered it like a blanket. I just want more, she said. More than peace? More than a husband who loves you? More than sons who are healthy and doing well in school? She did not answer. Mr. John picked up his pillow and went to sleep in the sitting room. That night, Maria lay in the empty bed and stared at the ceiling. She told herself she was right. She told herself she deserved better. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice was asking her a question. Are you sure? 2 weeks later, Maria went to visit Amaka again. She had called Amaka to talk, to tell her what was happening in her marriage. She thought Amaka, with her big house and her wealthy husband, would understand. She thought she would encourage her to leave Mr. John and find a better life. But when Maria arrived at the house, the gate took a long time to open. When it finally opened, the security guard looked uncomfortable. Maria walked to the front door and knocked. It took several minutes before Amaka opened the door. And when Amaka appeared, Maria's heart dropped. Amaka was not in a silk gown. She was wearing a simple wrapper tied around her. Her hair was not done. Her face looked tired. And around her left eye was something that Maria recognized immediately. A bruise, dark and swollen. Amaka! Maria started. Come inside, Amaka said quickly, looking over her shoulder. Inside, the big house felt different today. It felt cold. The curtains were drawn. The chandelier was off. The marble floor was still beautiful, but it felt empty, like a beautiful shell with nothing warm inside. They sat in the living room. The house girl brought water, but said nothing and disappeared quickly. For a long time, both women were silent. Then Amaka began to talk. She talked slowly at first, then faster, then through tears. She told Maria everything. Chief Osaro, her wealthy husband, was not a good man. Behind the big gates and the expensive cars, he was a man with a terrible temper. He hit her when he was angry, which was often. He controlled all the money. She could not spend anything without his permission. She had no account of her own. The designer bags and the Dubai trips were things she posted on social media so the world would not see the truth. She had no friends, he did not allow it. She had left her job before they married because he asked her to, and now she had no independence. I am a prisoner in a fine prison, Amaka said, wiping her eyes. Every night I cry. Every morning I wake up afraid. I have called my mother, but she says I should manage. She says at least he takes care of me. But Maria, what is he taking care of? My body? He is the one breaking my body. Maria sat and listened. She could not speak. She thought of the fountain outside, the black jeep, the marble floors. She thought of how she had looked at all of this and wanted it. She thought of what she had said to Mr. John. I think we should separate. Amaka held Maria's hand. Maria, tell me about your husband, Mr. John. Is he still the quiet, gentle man? Maria's eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered. Does he raise his hand at you? No, never. Does he insult you, embarrass you in public? No. Does he come home to you and the boys every night? Maria nodded slowly, and the tears began to fall. Then, my sister, Amaka said, gripping her hand tightly, you have something I have prayed to God for since the day I walked into this big house. Do not throw it away. Please, do not throw it away. Maria left Amaka's house that afternoon a different woman from the one who had entered. She did not take a bus home. She walked for a while even though the sun was hot. She needed to feel the ground under her feet. She needed to breathe and think. She passed by the roadside where she sold pure water. She saw another woman there now, sitting on the small stool, fanning herself and calling out to passers-by. She passed by the school where Mr. John taught. She stood at the gate and looked in.
She could hear a teacher's voice coming from one of the classrooms, calm and clear, explaining something to the children. She thought of Mr. John standing in front of his students every day, patient and dedicated, pouring himself into young minds even though the salary was small, doing it because it was honest, because he loved it. She thought of the night he had taken his pillow and gone to sleep in the sitting room without raising his voice. She thought of Tunde's drawing, the family standing together in front of their house, the smiling sun in the corner. And she thought of Amaka's bruise. By the time Maria reached their street, she was crying. She opened the door to their apartment. The house was quiet. The boys were at school. Mr. John had a free period in the afternoon and sometimes came home to rest. He was sitting in the living room when she walked in. He looked up. He saw her face. He saw the tears. He closed his book. Maria stood at the door and looked at her husband. She looked at the old chairs, the worn-out rug, the small fan on the table. Then she walked to where he was sitting, knelt down in front of him and took his hands in hers. "John," she said, her voice breaking, "I am sorry." He was silent. "I have been foolish," she continued. "I went looking at another person's life and forgot the value of my own. I compared what we have to what others show, and I did not look deeper. I said terrible things to you. I asked for something that would have destroyed us, destroyed our boys, and I am sorry." Mr. John looked at her for a long time. His eyes were soft. They were always soft. "John," she said gently. "Let me finish," she said, holding his hands tighter. "You have been nothing but a good man, a good husband, a good father. You have loved me faithfully. You have walked honestly. You have never hurt me. And I, she could not finish the sentence. Mr. John pulled her up gently and held her. He did not say, "I told you so." He did not remind her of the hurtful words she had spoken. He just held her, quietly, firmly. After a long moment, he said, "It's okay, Maria. We are okay." And in those 6 words, something that had left their home returned. Peace came back through the door. That evening, when Emeka and Tunde came home from school, they were surprised. Their mother had cooked a big pot of egusi soup, their favorite. The table was set. The house smelled like pepper and palm oil and joy. Mr. John was at the table and he was smiling. Tunde came in slowly, looking around. He could feel that something was different. "Mommy," he said carefully, "are you happy today?" Maria laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from the belly. "Yes, my son," she said, pulling him into a hug. "Mommy is very happy today." She held her small son and breathed him in. Emeka was already lifting the lid of the pot. "Egusi! Daddy, Mommy cooked egusi." "I can smell it from here," Mr. John said. "Come and sit down before your brother eats everything." They sat together at the table, a small table in a small apartment. The chairs were old. The fan made its usual noise. Outside, the street was noisy with the sounds of Benin City in the evening. But inside that apartment, there was warmth. Mr. John said a prayer, a short one. "Father, thank you for this food. Thank you for this family. Thank you for peace. Amen." "Amen," the boys shouted together, and they ate. In the months that followed, Maria did not stop thinking about Amaka. She prayed for her friend often. She sent her messages. Sometimes Amaka replied, and sometimes she did not. The situation was complicated, as these things often are, but Maria kept the door of friendship open. She also continued selling her pure water, but now she did not look at her water cooler with shame. She held her head up. She was an honest woman doing honest work. There was dignity in that. Mr. John did eventually apply for the vice principal position, not because of pressure, but because a colleague encouraged him and he felt ready. He did not get the position that year, but the year after he did. It brought a little more income into the home. They painted the apartment. They bought 2 new chairs, but Maria had already learned a long time before those chairs arrived that the chairs were not the point. She would sometimes sit in the evening,
watching her husband help Tunde with a drawing, watching Emeka kick a ball outside with the neighborhood boys, and she would remember the day she had almost walked away from this. She had nearly traded peace for appearance. She had nearly left love to chase envy. She had nearly destroyed something real because she was dazzled by something shiny. And she was grateful, deeply, truly grateful that she had not.